Hi, Steve Stolberg here with monthly painting video number 60, made in Kuala Lumpur, December 2018. This month I'm doing another slightly weird idea, because there's no easy way to categorize it. You'll see what I mean. First, I'll show you how to make my most useful brush, the smudge brush. It's simple, straightforward. This is just a block of black that I'm going to show you how to use it on. Here are the settings. I use it as a directional blur and also as finger painting. So yeah, that was the directional blur right there, and then if you use it in a circle or in different directions, you can smudge it like finger painting. And see here, I'm actually painting, I'm creating an image. I use it like this a lot, to move paint around. And I've started sketching. Basically it's the idea was a heart shape reflecting in water. If you a dark latex suit on a dark background, so you don't see the rest of her body very clearly, but you do see, since she has very pale skin, you do see that part which is exposed right here, and when it reflects in a reflective surface, in this case water, it's supposed to kind of look like a heart. So that was just the whole idea right there. It's just almost like a logo, just a simple graphical image that came into my mind, and I tried to sort of create since I guess you probably already know that I like to tell stories with my images. I like to do that, but in this case I don't have much of a story. I tried to create a little bit of a setting. Right now I'm calling it the Palace of Love. I don't know if I'm going to change that name later at some point, but like it's some kind of building where they have, you know, goings on like dominatrixes and stuff. I don't know. I guess I kind of ran out of inspiration there a little bit, but I wanted to investigate this graphical idea here. And here I am using construction techniques to just create a perfect symmetrical guideline for the heart shape in the water. I didn't need to apply this to the body shape up top. The slightly surreal thing I'm trying to capture here is that the heart shape in the water is a perfect heart, but the butt shape that in you know, up top, that the non-reflected part is not perfect. It's just anatomically correct, and then somehow it reflects and becomes this perfect heart. So that's part of the idea. So that's why I'm not using these construction lines up top, in case you were wondering. Yeah, there was a smudge brush there again. Just some minor adjustments to try to make it into the most kind of traditional heart shape that I could create, and then adjusting the outline a little bit to make it look like it's water, like it's reflecting in water. Not too much. I tried to keep it low-key there, and the rest of her shape, you know, obviously I don't need to keep it as low-key. I'm being a little bit more wobbly in the outlines there, but it is important for the idea to work that the actual heart shape itself is very clearly visible, instantly recognizable as a heart. And now I'm filling in the flat areas of color on different layers. You can see the layers on the right there. And this is her body. which is important to get anatomically correct, otherwise, well, I guess it could have worked if she was cartoony as well. Maybe it would have worked better if she was stylized. I don't know. It's not my favorite style though to do stylized stuff. It's I like more realistic style. Anyway, that's hair. As you may have heard me mention before, I like to add lots of hair, lots of long random hair in there to create some interest, some interesting shapes. These are the arches. I'm using similar construction techniques as I did with the heart there. Just create one arch, perfect that one, and then copy. There's another series of smaller arches up top. Pillar, and then just create one good pillar and then copy that to the other. In this case, there's only really one pillar that is really visible, fully visible. Yeah. And then the smaller pillars are next. Which are like this. And now I am finished with the construction, and now I'm going to make a mask that follows these construction lines. And I know I could have used layer masking and stuff, but I'll just temporarily make it into a single layer, normal layer, and then just use that for my selection, and then later delete it. Especially since this is an older building, so it doesn't matter if the mask doesn't have to be kept around super clean, perfect. Get rid of it after a while, and if there's any errors, they can be attributed to like a brick missing or whatever, you know, edges crumbling, you know, in the architecture. Is starting the shading on basically the only part of her that is where you can see the skin. The face also, but it's such a smaller part, and I kept that part in the shadow because I didn't want any other part of her to reflect in the water, you know. I mean that's the whole idea for this. There's only one reflection. And I added an apple there. I removed that later, but this is I'm trying to create a balanced composition, and I felt like something was missing on the left-hand side. Apple floating in the water. I don't know why. It's completely illogical, and that's the main reason why I removed it later, of course. Yeah, in a little bit you'll see me add a monk walking up stairs in the background there, and then even later than that I removed the apple. So. Yeah, I kept it around for a while. I played with the idea, but it didn't work. Yeah, here's the stairs coming in. And I also you see the reflections in the latex suit. Obviously, if you have something that's shiny like that, it's a good opportunity to make some cool reflections like that. And I also made them a little bit of a different color. Imagining maybe there's a skylight somewhere up above behind her that is opening up onto a darker sky, like a dusk or dawn, or maybe even just moonlight. I don't know. I didn't want to use red again. You know, I wanted to try a little bit of a different color. So here's the monk walking up those stairs, catching some light from an unseen light source up above him to the left. So yeah, I like that better because the composition, I don't know, her knee is pointing towards him there. The apple is just illogical, just strange, and him in there, I don't know, it doesn't feel as strange. So yeah, I kept that part. I played a lot later on, even now, but also later on, all the way through the process, I played a lot with the levels on. This was very tricky. I wanted some parts to be very dark, but then they got too dark, and then I had to lighten them up, and then I wanted some parts to be very bright, but then they got too bright, and I had to darken them down. It was back and forth, back and forth. So yeah, a lot of testing. Here I'm adding some texture. I'm about to add some more texture here. It's a bark texture. Well, first is a smudge brush, streaky smudge. Here's the bark texture here, and it actually worked quite well. It looks like stone. It looks like very rough brickwork there. So yeah, that's a cool example of how you can use a brush that was made for one reason, use it for something else completely different. I made it originally for the tree full of fairies fighting each other with some red fruits hanging. I don't know if you've seen it. It's one of my other videos, and it was just a big tree with lots of bark texture all over the place, and that's why I made this brush for that. And here I'm just sort of refining the stone, lighting coming in from the left, creating some soft shadows there. And again, this is speeded up about 10 times. And some more bark texture. This time I'm putting it there on the stairs there. Which these are on different layers, you know. The back wall, the stairs, and the arches, they're separate layers, so that makes it easy to work. Refining. This is supposed to be a zipper. Obviously, how else would she be able to get in and out of this suit? Yeah. And you can see how easy it is to make reflections in shiny things. So basically it's just one single selection. You can see here on her shoulder, just one quick selection, and then you airbrush into it. And for the best effect, you make sure to have the airbrush lighter and stronger on one side of the selection, so you don't have this bright color going all the way down. You probably usually want to make sure that like at least one side of the selection is kind of just disappearing into, they call it lost edge. There's a lost edge here, so you have a balance between sharp edge and lost edge. And the same thing on the other shoulder, same thing on the top of the head, same thing, same principle everywhere that this reflection is appearing. You can see I tried to do that. And here I'm refining. There's a streaky smudge brush which is new. I just recently made that one, and I have those two new brushes, the streaky paintbrush and the streaky smudge brush. Those two work very well together to make things look oil painterly, as you can see here. I already was able to get like halfway towards a painterly effect without those, but then just adding those touches here and there, I'm able to make it look very painterly. And then the problem with those brushes is that they're large and unwieldy, and if you make them small, you lose the point of them. You don't see the texture anymore. So you have to keep them to a certain size. So what you have to do then is you have to select. You have to make a selection and just use them inside the selection. Temporary selection. You know, make a selection, one brush stroke, maybe even just one, and then remove the selection, make another selection, one brush stroke again, like that. So, you know, that's the technique. If necessary, just one single brush stroke inside a selection. If you do too many brush strokes inside each selection, it starts to look like a selection. You'll start to see the edges of the selection, and it defeats the purpose. It doesn't look painterly anymore. You can see here a very sharp edge right here. That's what you want to avoid if you're doing if you're trying for the oil painterly kind of look. You also don't want to use the airbrush if you're too much. If you want the oil painterly look, you don't use a large airbrush, or a small one. I mean, you can use a large one subtly, softly, carefully. If you don't smash and kill the values as you're painting over with it. But you can't use a small one to paint with, like to sculpt these things here, for instance. You can't use an airbrush for this stuff here. That's just completely defeats the purpose of trying to make it look painterly. But instead just use those other brushes that I've mentioned now. I'm painting on top of the textures that I recently introduced to make them look more natural and painterly. And well, it's done. I deleted the apple and played with the levels of the different layers. Notice that I've increased brightness on the latex reflections here. And yeah, thanks for your support. Let me know if you have any feedback or questions. See you next month. Bye.